It is 13 minutes past 8. Good morning to you. It was the deadliest fire in recent British history, killing 72 people and leading to serious questions being asked about the safety of tower blocks.
Back then, the Grenfell community pulled together to get through the disaster, and now, exactly 3 years on, survivors are coming together once more to help NHS workers and vulnerable people during the coronavirus pandemic, as our correspondent Aisha Bush reports.
3 years on from the Grenfell Tower fire, this vibrant West London community is much quieter than usual. And the trauma and grief of so many who lost loved ones, friends and neighbours has been deepened by the anxiety and isolation of coronavirus. Nabil Shukair lost 6 members of his family in the fire, his mother, sister, brother-in-law and his 3 young nieces. And he says he's really struggled since the lockdown.
And they're still trying to cope and deal with it, and they're not being able to cope and deal with it because they're having to deal with the inquiry and everything else, you know. And then the COVID-19 come in, you know, and it put more strain on the families and themselves. And when you can't get the help that you want and you need because you're not able to physically speak to someone directly, you know, face to face.
Many people here are already vulnerable and, like so many Londoners, are dealing with the extra pressure brought by coronavirus. But yet again, this community has shown incredible strength and resilience.
When lockdown began, local resident Tariq Gotti, along with volunteer army cadets, started delivering supplies to the elderly, as well as local bus drivers, the fire brigade and cleaners. He lost a lot of friends in the fire and has recently seen relatives die from COVID-19.
A lot of people are struggling because, considering that they used to be able to go to their face-to-face appointment for therapy, a lot of that have stopped, and not everybody have access to Zoom or WhatsApp or something. I mean, some people can hardly even pay their own bills.
The Al-Manar Mosque has long supported locals who may be struggling with their finances or mental health. Soon after the fire, it opened its doors to survivors, offering food and shelter. And again, although closed as a place of worship, with the help of Aid UK volunteers, it's been collecting and distributing supplies to those impacted by the coronavirus.
Initially, we thought the elderly would be the most in need, and that's still the case. But then we started to notice people who are able-bodied, healthy people, but in temporary casual work, especially within the restaurant sector, were laid off without any service or support.
Over at the mosque kitchen, Munira Mahmood cooks with other volunteers for local key workers and NHS hospital staff. She managed to escape from the 5th floor of Grenfell Tower, where she lived with her family. Her close friend Rania Ibrahim and 2 children didn't make it out. The kitchen was opened up after the fire to give survivors a place to cook and eat. The Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle, helped the women create a cookbook, the proceeds of which are now helping pay for the ingredients.
When they sent me a picture, the first picture received when they're receiving the boxes, I was in tears. It was happiness tears, but the memory came back again. 3 years ago, I was receiving, and the time has come for me to give back. I wish I could hug them, you know. Back then they hugged me, but I cannot hug them, and I'm trying to hug them through food. This, you know, just showing that, you know what, we're here for you.
Unlike past anniversaries, which have seen hundreds of people take to the streets, this year the community is being encouraged to reflect and remember at home with online virtual gatherings. Church bells across London, including St Paul's and Westminster Abbey, will be rung 72 times to remember each of the victims. And many public buildings and homes will be illuminated in green.
That was our correspondent Aisha Bush reporting. Immediately takes you back, doesn't it, to that horrendous morning 3 years ago, turning on the TV and seeing those really grim images from West London. We're joined now by the Reverend Mike Long from Notting Hill Methodist Church and the Chief Executive of the Al-Manar Mosque, Abdul Rahman Syed. Good morning to you, gentlemen. Reverend Long first, talk to us in a little more detail about what the plan is for today.
Well, we have, obviously, very little is able to happen for for the public because of the coronavirus regulations. But what we are able to do is to broadcast events that have been pre-recorded, and there is also some live streaming that is going on. So there's a service this morning at 11 o'clock, which is being streamed. There's bell ringing at 6 o'clock, which is also being streamed, and then a series of speeches and contributions by local campaigners, activists, members of Grenfell United and so on, which are then going to be streamed for the local community and beyond.
Abdul Rahman Syed, I would like to just take a moment and ask you, how do you reflect this morning on what happened 3 years ago? It is so fresh in many people's minds, isn't it?
It is absolutely very fresh indeed. It was a morning that no one expected to be the way it was, and we suddenly discovered that we've lost dear members of our community, volunteers, and it was a very sad morning, seeing also the tower still in smoke. But then there was also the other positive side of humanity that was in display on that very morning. And that is the people coming from across the different backgrounds, social, professional, and so on, coming really to help together to support those who survived and those who were also in an uncertain situation because of the people who were left behind. And for a few weeks after the fire, they were only considered as missing people, so there was no confirmation of their situation, which added to the anxiety and pressure in those days. But the community coming together was a unity that was really, for me, unprecedented at the time, and this is how I remember it all the time.
Reverend Long, I was struck by your reference a few moments ago to the realities of the moment, limiting what you can do today as an act of commemoration. I wonder what the realities of the last few months have been like for the victims' families when, you know, it's still very fresh in the memory. The reality of life for those families is still very different from how it was, and yet, like the rest of us, it's been so limiting in the number of people we've been able to see.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I think one of the difficulties we face, of course, is that we are all in less contact with each other. It's much harder, and so many of us actually know less about how each other is getting on, how we are coping, how the rest of the community feels because of this sense of isolation. And one of the really difficult things about the anniversary, difficult enough as it is that the sense of solidarity and strength which so many people feel they need and appreciate at a time like this, it can't be demonstrated in the same way. So although many people know that there is so much support and thoughts and prayers out there, it's not the same as people actually being able to physically gather. And of course, we're not able to do that today. And we're just trying to do whatever we can to be able to show that all those who've been so traumatized by this fire, that they are not forgotten, and that we are determined that the 72 and all those who've been profoundly affected will be remembered and supported.
Abdul Rahman, has there also been a consequence in terms of the wheels of justice slowing down and it taking longer to get answers about what exactly happened on the night, because there has been this ongoing inquiry, but so many things have not been able to happen in the same way as they could do normally because of the coronavirus?
Absolutely. I mean, the justice is, in fact, very important in this case. It's also emotionally very important to have a closure to this tragedy. But at the same time, a lot has been going on within the community. Your report showed the role Munira plays, for example. She's one of the survivors. 3 years ago, she was at the receiving end of support. Today, she's very much like part of the support mechanism that is available to the community through her initiatives of supplying food to those in need. And there are so many other positive progresses that has been made within the community in terms of building resilience. And in fact, now, as we go through this COVID-19 pandemic situation, we are providing telephone counseling, which is available to the community 7 days a week. Other sessions earlier, which was covered in your report, also the food parcels and others. This has all come together because of the experience we went through at Grenfell tragedy, and then the lessons learned from that made us prepared to face any challenges as in when it comes.
Gentlemen, thank you both very much indeed. A message certainly containing some hope on the 3rd anniversary of that terrible disaster.